Hi there, folks. Welcome to the Minute to Midnight Show. This is Tony coming to you from New Zealand, and with me on the show I have a regular guest, Leo Hohmann in Georgia. And Leo, it's really good to have you back on today. I've been reading your Substack articles, and so I think this will be a really interesting discussion just based on what I've been reading of your writing lately. So welcome back.
Yes, so much to talk about today, Tony, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, okay. And I don't know where you want to start exactly. Maybe, well, I suppose the US shutdown might be a little place to start anyway right now with what's going on with the budget business between the Dems and the Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, we finally got the shutdown that in the recent years had always been threatened, but it never seems to actually materialize. It did one other time that I can remember, maybe in the last 5 to 7 years. So it's really nothing new. It's happened before, just not real recently. It's mostly a distraction. Shutdowns they're really misnamed. The government does not in any way, shape, or form really shut down. Yes, certain parts of it sort of shut down, and the employees get furloughed. Basically, they go home and get a little vacation, and then when they finally get the continuing resolution or whatever passed, they come back and they get their back pay and everything, and they never lose a dime in the process. We could only wish that it was an actual true shutdown, right? So I take it with a huge grain of salt. I'm actually following it very little because there's so many more important things going on right now in the world than this little fake shutdown in Washington.
Fair enough. So I don't know where you want to start, maybe with the digital ID and that type of thing, like you put out an article.
I think the march to war has increased. The rapid pace of the march to war has just increased exponentially over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that is, of course, all tied in with the march towards the digital ID, the biometrics that we're seeing implemented now in the UK, Canada. The EU has its ID they're working on rolling out. They announced that as of October 12th, they're going to start a pilot program where certain airports throughout Europe will have the biometric face scans going on. This has been going on in America for the last year.
Yeah.
They say it's on a voluntary basis, if you believe that. That's why I don't fly anymore. But at some point, it'll all be mandatory, and it will be at every airport worldwide. Now, whether or not we get to the point where your entire life history and all of your records, I'm talking everything from your criminal record, if you have one, to your health records, your dental records, your education records, your work history, your just everything, your health and medical, everything, your education records will be on your smartphone. Okay, that's where they're heading with a biometric digital ID. And you carry this little phone around with you. Eventually, it will be on your body, either as a wearable or under the skin. We've been told that by Yuval Harari. But they got to get it on the phone first, and you won't be able to go anywhere without your phone proving that you are who you say you are. You won't be able to get any government benefits. You won't be able to get any health care. You won't be able to get into any large scale venue, a football game, a baseball game, a concert hall. COVID was the testing ground for this.
Yeah.
I mean, I said it at the time. Nobody wanted to believe it then. But now everything that I and several others were saying at that time during COVID, that this is a beta test for the digital ID system, the global digital ID system, we were the crazy ones, right? And they've given us a reprieve, of 2 or 3, 4 years But now they're coming back at us with it and proving that the conspiracy theorists like myself were right. I wish I had been wrong. Okay. I wish I could go back in my writings from 2020 and 2021 and say, you know what, you were the stupid one. You were bamboozled. You believed the wrong sources. You suspected the wrong things of the wrong people. Bill Gates was absolutely trustworthy. I wish I could do that, because then that would mean a better future for my children and my grandchildren.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing that no, everything I warned people about in 2020, 2021, and 2022 is coming to pass. They're actually going to implement this digital ID system. Now, whether they get to fully implement it the way they want to and tie it to all of these different aspects of our lives, like I was just describing, I don't think the American people are ready for that yet. They may be able to do it in many Western European countries. I don't know about New Zealand or Australia, Canada, but I think it's going to take a major war and civil strife and people crying out in pain, please, government, help us. I think it's going to take something like that in the United States to totally enslave us with this coming digital ID. I can only speak for this country. I do think it's probably a minority of people who will put up a stink about it and rebel. But, it only takes about 5 to 7% of the population. This plan requires 100% participation to really work. Okay. So if you've got 5, 7, 10% of the population that says, oh, nope, you crossed my red line. I will forego my government benefits. I will close my bank account. That was the other thing. I knew I was forgetting a thing when I was ticking off all those aspects, health, medical, law enforcement, and now the other. I don't think I mentioned bank account.
Yeah.
Okay. You won't be able to have a bank account if we get this new system that isn't tied to your biometric digital ID. Oh, and the other thing, I forgot another big one. You won't be able to log onto the internet if they get what they want. All of these shows, these podcasts like we're doing here right now, no, it'll be over unless we submit to them and give them our biometric data that allows us to get on the internet and make podcasts like this. Okay. So this is where it's heading. I think if they tried it right now, a sizable minority would rebel here in America. I can't speak for the other countries.
Yeah.
I only really know my own. And like I said, this plan requires 99 to 100% participation for it to really work. And think about it. Even COVID, the COVID jabs, they had 80% participation here in this country.
Yeah.
That was a bit. I think that's why we've gotten a 4 to 5 year reprieve, and they kind of backed off a little bit. They said, wow, 80%, that's pretty good, but it's still not good enough for what we need.
Yeah.
So, some countries like Israel were upwards of 95 to 98%. That's getting into the territory of what they need. That's why I laugh when people say Israel's a democracy and a free country. No, it's not. They were one of the most energetically enthusiastic mandated countries where they were. The government was mandating the jab. You couldn't do this, that, or the other unless you got the jab. We had that here in this country in certain cities. Okay, there were like 10 cities in America, major cities, where you could not go to a restaurant, even, let alone a large-scale venue, without presenting your digital COVID passport. But it was never a nationwide thing or even a statewide thing here in America. In countries like Israel, it was. I don't know what it was like in New Zealand,
well, I
Australia.
can tell you, New Zealand, there's a few points you've brought up. So New Zealand, we had a fairly high, because we had a leftist government at the time, and we had a fairly high take-up of the whole vaccine mandate. But I think the media made it sound a lot higher than it actually really was in reality, because there are a lot of people that never took it. and there was quite a big uprising in New Zealand, and police cracked down towards the end, but it really left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, so they had to back off. And we went fairly lenient after that. Compared to America, New Zealand went more lenient than America did, basically. So it was easier here after a while. When you mention Israel, I get sent stuff by somebody in Israel quite often, and he was not jabbed. And he was saying at the time how difficult it was. You could only find little stores. You couldn't go into the big ones to buy things. You had to find these little kind of ma and pop type stores to get groceries, and all that. It was getting real tough for him over there. So now with the digital ID and so on in New Zealand, so currently we have a more supposedly centralist conservative government, and I don't think this government would push those digital IDs to that degree. Like Australia is pushing it harder than New Zealand and so on at the moment. But then, all you need is a bit of an economic collapse kind of thing happening, and then people will vote this government out, and the next term we'll be back to a leftist government again, and they will definitely push it. So that's,
100%.
Yeah.
That was the point I was in a long roundabout way trying to make, that, they did pretty well with COVID with the 80%. And that's the media's figures, by the way. It may not have been actually that high because, like you said, they usually, the media, the corrupt liberal media, tries to make it higher than it actually is. It could have been closer to 70% here in the States in terms of how many people got, at least one shot. I think they said 80% got at least one shot.
Right.
So even among the 80%, some people said, fool me once, but not fool me twice. I'm not getting any more, after they got one.
Yep.
But the point being, I think they knew, and they know that they have to bring the rest of the game plan into place, the full digital ID system with the digital money and everything, on the backs of a huge world war, and economic collapse. And that's what I think we're heading for. And just in the last 3 weeks, it's mind-blowing how much has come out about how badly these different governments want to go to war. I mean, the European leaders are on fire for war with Russia. I mean, they can taste it. They're so close now to launching this NATO-Russia war that they've been wanting for quite some time. They just knew they weren't quite ready for it in terms of, the manpower, the munitions. Donald Trump, in his speech yesterday before the 800 and some high generals and admirals, him and Hegseth yesterday really spelled it out. They basically said, this is the new way we're going to go. We are the Department of War. We are warriors. They all but said, we want to go to war. We want to make it offensive wars, not just defensive wars. That's why we've renamed the department from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And Trump said that, I don't remember if this was in his speech or after the speech with a comment, but he said that their goal is to at least double, if not quadruple, the output of munitions that American and Western factories are doing in terms of missile warheads, missiles and mortar shells, 155 millimeter mortar shells, missiles, all of this. They need to at least double it, preferably quadruple it. Now, why would you need to do that if you weren't planning to go to war? You certainly would not. Israel's getting ready to roll out its new laser defense system. I think that's going to be a big deal. That will make them even more brazen in going to war with Iran and whoever else, because they will have this souped up missile defense system that's supposedly even better than the Patriot missile interceptors. They told us really the quiet part out loud yesterday. They are preparing for war, and not just some little skirmish. Venezuela, that might be the warm-up act, but that's not going to be the big party, okay? The main course, so to speak. It's going to be war against Russia, a rival superpower. And Trump yesterday continued his irresponsible rhetoric. You would not talk like this unless you wanted to go to war. Again, referring to Russia as a paper tiger. And he said that in a social media post about a week or so ago. And then he doubled down on it in his speech yesterday, saying that if they were a real superpower, they would have cleaned Ukraine's clock in no more than a week's time. They've been at it for 3.5 years, so they must not be a real superpower. They're a fake superpower. What is that message there? And he just went on and on and on about how America's military is so much bigger and better. He spouted outright lies that the United States has a bigger and better nuclear arsenal than Russia.
Yeah.
We have better nuclear submarines than Russia. He said theirs are detectable. We know where they're going. Wherever they go, we know where they are. Ours are indetectable. We can secretly move our nuclear subs anywhere and nobody knows where they are. There is documented evidence, articles in the open source media over the last 5 years of how the United States has had a large, big problem tracking Russian submarines. Okay.
Yeah.
You can go and research that online right now, and the articles will pop up. A friend of mine was sending them to me one after another yesterday as Trump was spouting these lies. So yeah, Trump has been somehow he's either changed and he's no longer America first. He's a globalist,
I think he's always been one.
Or I was getting ready to say, and this is the theory that I would come down on. He never was an anti-globalist. He never was America first. He works for the globalists, absolutely, inside and out. He is totally a globalist asset, and he will change his mind and go to war. All he has to do is be told by the right people. Okay, absolutely. And that explains why he had so many neocons in his inner circle. People like Mike Waltz, his national security advisor, now the UN ambassador. You know, people like Marco Rubio, people like General Kellogg. These are all dyed-in-the-wool neocon globalists who march to the tune of the international bankers whenever they're told that now's the time to go invade another country and start another war here, there, or yonder. And don't worry about paying for it. That'll come on the backs of the U.S. taxpayer. And don't worry about the bodies. We'll provide the bodies. All we have to do is a false flag attack of some sort, and we'll get those stupid Yankees, those stupid Americans to send their sons to sign up for the military, like after 9/11, and they'll throw their sons at us to go die on the front. It works every time. So expect a big false flag attack. The Charlie Kirk thing was major, but I feel like that was just a softening up of the battlefield. They still need something even bigger than that to take place to get people to cry out and say, oh my gosh, the enemy is so-and-so, okay? And we need to go to war with them. Fill in the blank. Russia, China, maybe both. I don't know, Iran. But big war is coming.
So people forget, and I've never forgotten, before Trump's first term, when he was still in the election campaign, he said, I am a globalist, a nationalist and a globalist. People ignore that. That was out of Trump's own mouth way back then. And I've always believed he's a globalist asset. I've said that since before he was elected the first time. I've never changed that. People can go back through all our Minutes Midnight shows. I've never changed that belief that Trump was always a Manchurian candidate, a Trojan horse, whatever you want to call him. And now we're seeing it. It doesn't matter. When you're in politics, to get to the top echelon of politics, you have to be part of the club. That's it. I don't think you get there if you're not, whether you're left or right. It's just, there. And as far as the war goes, though, Leo, I mean, Russia's nukes are like they've got ones that could, put whole continents to sleep. You don't need to have, massive influx of tons of them. They've only got to have a few launched, and that's that. So to call Russia a paper tiger, I mean, that's just, my goodness.
Yeah, totally reckless and irresponsible, unless you're a globalist puppet and a Manchurian candidate, right? So, I think the globalists, they looked at the landscape and they said, you know what, we don't need the left and the useful idiots on the left anymore. They will do pretty much anything we want them to do. We need to get the right on board with the Great Reset and the surveillance state, which is when I say Great Reset and surveillance state, what am I talking about? The digitization of humanity.
Yeah.
Which is going to be done with the biometric digital IDs, first on these phones and later under the skin. The left would go along with that, anytime. They needed to see how many on the right would go along with it. And how do you do that? You introduce it through a right-wing Republican president.
Yeah.
Now, I have full confidence, like I said, that a certain segment of President Trump's base, people who voted for him, will break off. This is what the globalists want to see. How many from that large group of 78 million or however many, 75 million people who voted for Trump, how many of those people are true blue Trump sycophants? Meaning, if he said, drink your urine and say that it's Coca-Cola, they would do it.
Yeah.
And how many of them just voted for Trump because they didn't like the other option and will break off from him when he tells them to do something that they feel is not in their best interest, okay? Like the digital ID, but it could be something else is starting off maybe not quite as dramatic as that. I don't know. But I think they're in the process right now because they're all about dividing the globalists. They like to maintain what they call like a managed division, a managed tension in society where they keep us from talking to each other. And we've had that left-right divide for years where even people in the same family, you're left, I'm right, we can't talk anymore, right? That's been going on at least since COVID. But so we've had this left-right paradigm, but now I think it's going to be how many even within the right during Donald Trump's administration can we divide off from each other and splinter this even further? So where we know not only does it splinter American society further, but it also shows us exactly who our enemy is and how large it is. See? So so you got this MAGA base of 70 some million people, almost 80 million. And how many of those are critical thinkers who, when they hear something from Donald Trump come out of this puppet's mouth, and they'll say, that doesn't square with my values, I'm not going to do it. And how many will say, oh, even though it seems a little weird, a little maybe wrong, Donald Trump said it, and we know that he's smarter than everybody and is playing 5D chess, so we need to trust him and do it.
Yeah.
By the end of Trump's administration, they will know how many in America are one or the other. Sycophants who, if the right man tells them to do something, they'll do it, even if it sounds a little weird and not in their best interest, they'll do it anyway, because I trust Trump, and he knows more than I do. He must be playing 5D chess, so I'm going to do it, even if it seems a little weird to me or outside of my value structure. They'll know how many are that, and they'll know how many are still critical thinkers. They haven't checked their brain at the door for Donald Trump. Yes, they voted for him, but they're done with him because the messaging they're getting from him is now antithetical to their values.
I tell you what, I'll go even add to that and say uniting towards a one world religion is another part of the goal,
Yes.
And then I'm looking at Turning Point USA as as a catalyst for that in many ways. Again, it's like, people, will they think critically about what doctrinally they're told? Will they just jump on it? Oh, this is Christian, we've got to jump on board with it. Will they look at it and go, hang on a second, where is this leading? Why are we being united with the Roman Catholic Church and whatever else, and moving it all together? Because I think that's a critical part of the beast system, is the one world government and a false prophet type thing, whoever that is.
And the sort of syncretization.
Yes, and I see that Charlie Kirk assassination is pushing that.
Too, by the way. Mormonism is being folded into the greater Christian religion.
Yeah, exactly. And you're seeing that big time in the last couple of weeks. And so I don't think any of it's by accident.
No, I don't either. I really don't. So the remnant, I guess the bottom line is the remnant is going to seem like it's getting smaller and smaller, but it probably always was small. We just didn't know, because it was easy to go along with some of the truth as long as you weren't being persecuted, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm looking at so that World Government Summit and people like Larry Ellison pushing for a digital ID and everything to be in that. And of course, he received a ton of money right on Trump's first day in office.
He is a close ally of Donald Trump, right? I mean, you almost have to be willfully blind at this point to not see where Trump is taking this country. But, they always have these false narratives. He keeps his enemies close. He's playing 5D chess. They have these pat answers that they throw at you whenever you show them this evidence. Like, who is Larry Ellison? Who is Bill Gates? Who is Sam Altman? Mark Andreas? David Sachs? These are all in Trump's inner circle. David Sachs is in charge of AI and cryptocurrency for Trump. Mark Andreas is a venture capitalist who was a lifelong Democrat, but voted for Trump and gave him a lot of money because he knew that Trump pledged to Andreas and his ilk, people like him, that he would take all regulation off of AI and make it an unfettered free-for-all. And so you even had these lifelong Democrat technocrats like Mark Andreas flooding the Trump coffers with money and throwing their support behind him. And so, of course, Donald Trump is going to bring forth this surveillance state. He's going to, at the very least, build out the infrastructure for it with all of these AI data centers and Project Stargate and all of this crap. So you really do have to, you can talk about 5D chess and you can talk about keeping your enemies close or all of this stupid stuff, but follow the money. The money never lies. If you look at where the money is coming from and where it's going, it will tell the whole story and who Trump is really allied himself with. And it ain't us, we the people.
No, that's absolutely right. And so let's look at Europe, for example, too, because America is obviously where you are, and it's a very important player. But you look at Europe, and so with them wanting to implement digital IDs so that you can't go between countries in Europe without the digital ID, and a lot of people do. They go country to country throughout Europe. But if you can't do that without the digital ID, straight away you're going to get so many people, we can't fight this, we have to join it.
100%. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where people need to make some hard decisions.
Yeah.
I don't think getting out and protesting is going to make 2 bits of difference, okay? You're going to have to decide to not travel. You're going to have to decide not to participate in the system. And you're going to have to try to operate outside the system as much as possible. If that means driving instead of flying for a while, that's what you need to do. I think it's going to be implemented at the airports first, okay?
Yeah.
And eventually you won't even be able to drive your car without a digital ID. So prepare yourself mentally for that right now, okay? Mentally and physically. You might be reduced to your bicycle. You might be have to take back roads instead of interstate if you're going to drive your car, because there'll be checkpoints along the interstate at some point. The major highways, I don't know what they're called in your country, but here we call them interstate highways. This is where it will start. I don't know if it will get to the point of totalitarianism, the totalitarian fullness of the digital biometric system will happen in our lifetime or not, but it sure seems to be progressing at a fairly rapid pace. So, I mean, certainly if you're a young person, 20s, 30s, 40s, I can't imagine you won't see the worst of it. But, some of us in our 60s and 70s, I don't know. I do think we'll see a lot of it, but it just depends how quickly they continue to move with it, whether they have some setbacks, perhaps.
Yeah.
And a lot of that might have to do with how many people, completely important people. Now, what if you're a corporate CEO or even just a middle manager of a important corporation and you say, I'm not doing that. Sorry, I quit. Because I have to travel, from this country to that country for different meetings or sales meetings or whatever. If enough people do that, and it doesn't take much, like I said, the system requires 98 to 99% participation. If 3 to 5% of important people were to do that, that would, I think, slow it down, if not postpone it. So it remains to be seen whether or not they will be completely successful in rolling out this digital surveillance state. If I had my druthers and had to guess, I would say they'll probably get their 98 to 99%. If it's 98 to 99%, you can always deal with that few number of people. You can replace them. You can train others to take their place. But once it gets to 4, 5, 6, 7% for sure, you just can't. You can't continue with the system because it would be too disruptive. Well, it will take that amount of people. I don't know the exact percentage. I'm throwing out ranges of percentage where it could be problematic. If that happens, this will definitely slow down.
I think the UK must be a pretty good canary in the coal mine with all of this.
Yes.
What happens in Britain now is a big signal, because if Britain rebels against this system, it'll be very hard to implement it anywhere else. And out of all of Europe, I think Britain is probably the most likely country to go, no, we're not going to fall in line with this. We'll have to see. But I do think, England and the surrounding other nations there are a pretty important one to watch as to where this goes. And it would be interesting to hear from people in comments in the UK and in Europe about how they see things going on there at the moment. So if you're in one of those countries, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah. So, yep, there's a lot. I think in New Zealand at the moment, I think that struggle to get people to really follow into that system here right now. But we're only a small country, and of course, if everyone else falls in, then we'd probably likely to fall in line. But I think they'd have trouble implementing it here right at the moment. But, who knows? I didn't expect New Zealand would be.
I think that's why they need world war and economic collapse. And here in the United States, I'm pretty positive the plan involves World War III on an international level and civil war or something close to that here at the domestic level. If they can get America embroiled in civil war and world war simultaneously, I think they can take us down. I think the economy will be so overburdened by such a transpiration of events that, people would be so desperate they would do almost anything.
So I'm seeing the left-right divide in America. It's huge between the left and the right, and the potential for civil war there. It looks, it's definitely there. The other thing I'm watching very closely is the gold and silver markets, because they're both going up, and that means big money is being put into those two things. And there's got to be reasons.
Why would they be doing that? Why would governments and billionaires be buying so much gold? Because in normal times, gold is a very poor investment. You only invest in gold when you know or you highly suspect that some catastrophic event is around the corner. Okay.
Yeah.
Earth-shaking economic event.
Yeah.
World War III. They're also building bunkers, right? The billionaires.
Yes.
So they know something is coming.
And the billionaires are being given an easier route to getting dual citizenship with New Zealand. So a lot of them have their hideouts here, American billionaires. That's and true. Chinese ones too. So that there's a lot more of them coming here. But they don't have to give up their citizenship elsewhere to do it. So it's quite clever, really. You can have here as a bolt hole. And that's become very much easier in the last few months.
Absolutely. Zuckerberg, he's been building bunkers. Bill Gates, all of them, they're doing this at the same time. They're hoarding gold, these billionaires. So, who would have thought, Mark Zuckerberg would suddenly be a Republican? It's just so obvious what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you almost have to be willfully blind and want to be lied to believe some of these narratives that are going around within the conservative movement.
Absolutely. So as we look to wrap up, as Christians now listening, hopefully with your eyes being opened, what would you suggest, that we do? How should people navigate from here?
Well, on the physical front, like I always say, make sure you're stocked up in food and water. Those are the main necessities. Gasoline, because I could see how overnight you could wake up, if even not World War III, but just the Iran-Israel war, maybe that spreads in the Middle East, and we're not even at war with Russia yet, right?
Yeah.
You could wake up one morning and gas is $3 a gallon, and then tomorrow it's $6 a gallon. And you're now priced out. So, get yourself some 5-gallon gas cans, fill them up, and maybe you can help and you can ride it out a little bit before you're left with no transportation. So things like that, ammunition, get training in firearms. Don't just buy you a little handgun and put it away and say, oh, this is for, that day down the road when America falls into what they call a SHTF. No, you need to get trained on that thing. You need to know how to take it apart, and you need to know how to put it back together. Not the whole gun, but enough to clean it. And you need to know how to load, reload, and fire somewhat on target, right? So, and that's just the basics.
I'm not also maybe a generator.
To go, sign up for military training.
Yeah.
What?
And people might be looking. It might be worth looking at a generator or making sure you've got plenty of lighting, ability to light and warmth. Those are two other important things.
Especially if you live in a cold climate. Make sure you have firewood stored up. If you have a fireplace or a wood stove. And let's see what else. Whew.
Well, there's gold and silver if you can still do it.
A water filtration system.
Yeah.
You can stock up a lot of bottled water, but that's only going to go so far. People don't realize how much water they actually use until it's become scarce. Another possibility with all these data centers, Tony, is that people's water bill is going to skyrocket. Like, say you're paying $40, $50 a month for water right now. A year or two from now, you could be paying $150, $200 a month because there's so little water because the data centers are taking it all. This is another horrific possibility. Same with electricity. That's going to skyrocket because the data centers are going to eat up all the electric power capacity. And this is all on Trump's watch. It's all part of the AI surveillance state. They say it's because we need to keep up with China on a military level. Yeah, well, I think that might be part of it, but it's also to build out the surveillance state. And it's going to cost us, not just in terms of our freedoms, but in terms of our pocketbook, electricity and water being first among the things that we may no longer be able to afford in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so people should have candles and kerosene and things like that too.
Yes.
I know that's another option.
And candles are cheap. You can buy a ton of them, right?
Yeah.
But think about 3 or 4 years from now, they may not be so cheap or even available, right? So
think about if people have a natural disaster, how quickly all that stuff sells out. You know,
yes.
A hurricane.
Lighters.
Yeah.
You can buy a lighter for 25, 50 cents. Think about if we had a meltdown, an economic meltdown, and we go to World War III, and all of this hits the fan. You're not going to find something as simple as a lighter, let alone find it for 50 cents.
True.
So matches, lighters, all of these simple little things that we just take for granted are going to become super valuable. You would even be able to use them for bartering, I believe.
Yeah.
If this gets bad enough.
And coffee, another good one for bartering.
Yeah.
So spiritually, what about that? We
just get back to the basics, right? It's easy to stray away from it. It's easy in modern life to get distracted or go down rabbit holes. I think a lot of us tend to sometimes go down spiritual or religious rabbit holes and focus just on this one little narrow, like biblical prophecy or something like that, while we're letting our own souls, decay and kind of grow lazy, right?
Yeah.
So go back to the basics of the Bible and don't forget about that.
Well, that's true, because as people come under stress too, it's going to be even more important. And so the more we're rushing around like headless chickens, the less likely you are to spend time reading the Bible and prayer. So it's probably we really need to address that first, make that.
Yes. And I would also say, don't let your love grow cold.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Jesus warned, I believe it was in Matthew 24, that in the end times, because there will be so much violence, the world will be eaten up with violence, but the love of many would grow cold. And you can see that. And you can see it in our leaders. I mean, at that 7-hour Charlie Kirk funeral extravaganza on Sunday, it was very mixed messaging, that came out of that. I don't know how much you watched, but, there were some people saying we need to forgive and move on and, and take this fight of Charlie Kirk on, but remain peaceful and do it according to biblical values. And then there was other people, who got up there and just, we're turning the screw. It's the left. It's our enemy. We'll never be able to be part of them. And President Trump, I have to say, was part of the latter. He said, I hate my enemies and I want to get revenge on them. And he was the last speaker, the sort of the crescendo of the whole thing. And that's what people were left with. Hate your enemies and get vengeance. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's biblical.
It's not. And anyone that thinks Trump's a Christian really, he said lots of other things. You would have to go, that doesn't line up with what a Christian should speak. So it's time to take those rose-tinted glasses off and realize that he isn't one. And no matter how many Paula Whites and those type of people come out there and also get your eyes off the stupid Seven Mountains thing. That's nonsense. Christians are not here to take over government and media and all that before Jesus returns. We're here to win souls for Christ, not trying to take over the world or some stupid thing.
100%. Yeah. And just remember that remember the words of Jesus. That's all you have to do. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who despitefully use you. That's a long way from Donald Trump. Hate your enemy and wreak vengeance upon them.
Yeah. I think this is probably one of the most important shows we've done in a long time. I really hope people will, like this, and B, share it widely. That people need to hear what's been said today, Leo. I really feel like this is a critical show for people to hear.
Well, I think it is timely because we're getting ready to head into some strange times. We already are, where we see leaders saying strange things.
Yeah.
They, for some reason, feel emboldened to speak forth these evil, like almost like curses upon the earth. I'm seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing more and more people getting angry around, and
Yes.
the world's changing. People's attitudes are not what they once were. Selfishness is much more evident. It's just a chaos, turmoil. People are just under stress.
Yes.
It's just,
Well, remember, out of chaos comes order. That's the plan of the globalists.
Yes.
Create as much chaos as possible, and then out of that, you create your new world order. That is what they're working towards. We're living it right now. We're in the chaos stage. At some point, we will move towards the new order.
And that's just made me think of one more thing before I wrap up, and that's basically the fact that you can't rely on the media, like videos and YouTube and that. There's so much AI in it now that determining what's actually real and what's fake is becoming harder and harder, and people need to stop getting all their answers from AI. They need to stop looking at things as if it's necessarily the truth. Get back to what you knew was from scripture, what you knew before all this nonsense, and realize that we're being lied to, and it's all propaganda to take us where they want us to go, and YouTube and all these other platforms are big time doing it.
Yes. Oh, and one other thing just hit me that Trump said yesterday. It was actually reported in a lot of the mainstream media, but you don't know how many in our group actually watch or listens to the mainstream media. But he did say another very creepy thing, in my opinion, that all of these troop movements to major U.S. cities that he's planning, Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York,
Portland.
He's talked about New Orleans. Now Portland, Oregon was the big one. He said yesterday that these would provide training grounds for our troops going to war.
Wow.
That he was going to use violent U.S. cities here at home to be the training grounds for our troops.
Wow.
My head almost exploded when I heard that. And this is from the peace president.
Yeah.
Who recently converted the Department of Defense to the Department of War.
Mm-hmm.
He is now going to war against his own people in U.S. cities and using that as a training ground for the ultimate world war overseas, which will eventually come back here as well. It couldn't be more Orwellian, Tony.
Yeah.
In Orwell's novel, what did he say? War is peace, peace is war. We see that now coming from our own government, creating the War Department and talking about we are the administration of peace.
It's a joke. Okay. So where do people find you and your writings? And I have to say, I mean, the last couple of articles you've put out on your Substack are real must reads for people. So I think, how do people find you?
Yeah, my Substack, where I'm doing 4 to 5 articles a week, can be found at leohohmann.substack.com. And Hohmann is spelled Hohmann with 2 N's at the end. So leohohmann.substack.com, and then also leohohmann.com, my website, where I'm playing around with a little different format of just posting once a week and giving sort of a roundup of all the news events that stood out to me over the past week, giving a roundup with what happened, and here's my analysis and how I interpret it. So where it's leading us. So leohohmann.com for the weekly roundup, and leohohmann.substack.com for the more daily articles.
And get on your mailing list so that you receive notifications of all of those. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, as again I've said, I think this is a very important show. I hope people will like it and share it. And so thank you for being on again today, Leo.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Tony.
Cheers. Folks, also make sure you subscribe to us at aminutetomidnight.com with Midnite spelled MIDNITE, and make sure that you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel and so on as well. We do run A Minute to Midnight 100% by donations. I want to say a big thank you to the folks that do donate to help us. If you want to help, that's always appreciated, and you can donate at aminutetomidnight.com as well. And the music used in our shows I've written, played and recorded. And there is some free music on our website of mine as well if you want to download any of that. God bless. God willing, we'll be back with another episode in a few days' time.